So what do we learn this week about Splendid Landfall? And overall, we ended up 3-2, and 3-2 is fine, especially for a deck that is way off the wall. And the deck, oh man, it's hard to really say. So the deck has some awesome things going on that were really successful. I was super impressed by Retreat to Emeria and the ability for that to gum up the board against like green black Constrictor and decks like that. Just makes so many chump blockers, makes it so hard for the opponent to really attack through. So that was one of the biggest pluses. The combo of Retreat to Hagra and Walking Ballista, giving it Death Touch to shoot things down, that won us games, and it didn't come up often, but that was pretty sweet as well. So those were a couple of the big pluses. Also, we get some good cards. Grimflayer, Walking Ballista, good magic cards. Tireless Tracker, same way. We have Fatal Push. That's also the good news. Now, on the other hand, there's some things that I really didn't like. So let's start with the biggest one, and that is just the mana in general was super frustrating. So if you look at this mana base, there are 2 Hissing Quagmires, and then a bunch of weird search out basic things. So 2 Warp Landscape, 4 Evolving Wilds, 2 Blighted Woodlands. So 8 colorless lands that can tutor out colored lands in one way or another. Then a million basic lands, 7 forests, 6 swamps, 3 plains, and a waste. So the mana was super frustrating, and we definitely had situations where we just couldn't cast our stuff. We'd draw all forests and swamps or one or the other, and we just couldn't play Magic, or we'd have to just play awkwardly off curve. Our last match was a really good example of that. We needed a turn where we could go Grimflayer plus Vessel of Nascency on turn 3, and we just didn't have the mana to do it, so we had to choose either or, and then we ended up never being able to play and crack the Vessel because of how the game went. And really, like, the difference between being able to play that Vessel on turn 3 very well may have been us winning or losing that game. We ended up losing, but if we had played the Vessel, there was a chance that things went differently, and we would have been able to win. So the mana base is a big one, and I get that the deck needs all these basics because they have all those basic tutors, the Blighted Woodlands, the Evolving Wilds, the Warp Landscape, and those synergize with the Splendid Reclamation Plan and with the Gitrog monster. So I understand that we need a higher than normal concentration of basic lands, but still going 7, 6, 3, and 1, that gives us 17 basic lands. That's just too many, I think. I think we need to get playsets of Hissing Quagmire. We need to get maybe a playset of a fast land or some combination of Concealed Courtyards and Blooming Marsh. Something to give us dual lands that allows us to actually make sure we can cast our spells on time, especially in the early game. Like, because we were losing games because of that. Also, my pet peeve was the waste. I know why the waste is in the deck. The waste is in the deck to give the deck a way to get back Worldbreaker. But after playing the deck, I don't think we need Worldbreaker, and that also means we don't need Waste, and the Waste was super frustrating. There were a lot of games where we drew Waste, and unless we're sacking it to Worldbreaker, Waste is just really painful in our deck. It's not helping us cast our colored spells on time, and we have some significant mana costs. We need green on turn 1, green-black on turn 2, potentially double black on turn 4 for Yohani's expertise, and that's not even including like Planar Outburst and the sideboard, which is double white on turn 5. So the Waste has got to go. The Worldbreaker can go along with it. Get them both out of there. Yohani's expertise, I don't know the reason for that in the main deck. It feels like a better sideboard card to me. The only matchup where it's really good is if you're against a like kind of go wide creature deck. Maybe some matchups against Mardu vehicles, it's solid enough, but I just don't know if that's a card we want in the main deck at the moment. The other one was Gurupur Orrery. while we had a couple of games where it was insane, a lot of the time we just couldn't afford to take a turn off at 4 mana for the effect, and there were some times where it just did nothing. Not only were we taking a turn off, but we didn't have extra land drops to make, we didn't have the ability to Ancestral Recall off of it. So I think the main thing I would do would be to tighten up the one-ofs. So change the mana just by adding more dual lands, and then cut Yahani's Expertise, cut Gurupur, Orrery, cut the World Breaker, and just kind of tighten up. We can use those slots on more good spells, like a 4th Tireless Tracker, maybe a Grasp of Darkness for removal. So I think there's things, even a second Gitrog Monster. Gitrog Monster was pretty good and pretty dominating in some positions, and was just like a must-kill threat. So the deck was better than I thought it would be, with a 3-2 record, and it did some really crazy things sometimes. It was also just really frustrating some games, because it felt like we were losing to ourselves, but the combo's cool. Splendid Reclamation did some awesome things. Like, it is a good Splendid Reclamation deck. Ballista with the retreats, and just retreat to Emiria in general. We generated a ton of value, and that part worked really well. So I think it's good enough to play, and I could imagine taking it to FNM. Just tighten up the mana base, cut back on some of the one-ofs that were sort of lacking, and just fill in those 3 or 4 slots with better spells, and you should be good to go. And I could definitely see you having some success with the deck. Like, it seems good enough. Anyway, that's been our Much Abrew About Nothing for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon.